Tom Holland stars as adventurer Nathan Drake in the latest video game adaptation, Uncharted. Here, he is recruited by Mark Wahlberg's Sully in search of a long-lost treasure. Together, they encounter Chloe Fraser and a team of wealthy, deadly villains who are also seeking the mysterious treasure. Uncharted is in many ways a traditional film. If you have ever seen an Indiana Jones movie, or National Treasure, or Romancing the Stone, then Uncharted pretty much gives you more of that, but with more action and bigger, louder set pieces. This is as much of an adventure movie as it is a comedic action flick, and luckily for Uncharted, it's still fun despite lacking in originality. The central story has the main characters debating issues around trust and faith, eventually leading them to the inevitable, a team-up. On the surface though, they go through ancient ruins, hidden halls, old jungles, and they solve surprisingly simplistic puzzles and mysteries along the way too. The overarching narrative of Uncharted is enjoyable, but it isn't the most sophisticated or depth-filled one. This is a film focused more on entertainment than sending a deep, resounding message. As such, it relies heavily on the action scenes and the back and forth comedic beats between Nate and Sully. Luckily, the action set pieces are exciting and exhilarating, with good choreography and direction. Notably, for a film based on a video game where the main character ends up becoming a mass murderer, the Nathan Drake of the film has a surprisingly low body count, obviously for the sake of realism, but also to help emphasize him as a hero. One of the action scenes depicted heavily in the trailers is ripped right out of the third video game. Here, Nate falls out of a flying plane absent a parachute. Probably the worst way of falling from a plane if given the choice. This scene is strikingly like the one featured in the video game, but the setup and story surrounding it is different. The scene manages to convey the heightened speed and danger of the situation very well, although some of Nate's physics-defying leaps and jumps are a tad out of place in the film. Another action scene highlight is also teased in the trailers, featuring two ancient pirate ships suspended beneath helicopters. This scene is very creative with smart choreography, good editing that speeds up events, and a welcome use of the main Uncharted theme and score. It suitably builds on everything that came before it, ending the film on a high, literally. In terms of comedy, this area is a little more hit and miss. A lot of the comedy of Uncharted is between Nate and Sully, bouncing digs and jibes at one another with casual insults, sarcasm and one-liners. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Regardless of how funny they are, Tom and Mark have great chemistry together. Their relationship feels real and authentic, if a little rushed into, and they end up becoming a decent comedic duo. The problem is that neither of these actors looks or sounds much like the characters they're adapting. Mark Wahlberg's Sully, for example, looks nothing like the Sully of the video games, and he doesn't bother to try and sound like him either, in terms of voice and his mannerisms and personality. The Sully of the video games is a much more relaxed, cooler character, whereas Mark is going for more of a snarky, know-it-all mentor figure. The performance is good, so long as you realise he isn't adapting that of the original video games. The same goes for Tom Holland's Nathan Drake. Here the character is far younger than his video game counterpart, with a bartending backstory absent from the games, as well as a history of pickpocketing and con artistry, which all works to make Tom's Nathan a much more desperate and perhaps even villainous version of Nathan Drake. Other elements like his relationship with Sam and his upbringings in an orphanage are similar though, but overall neither Tom nor Mark are playing the characters from the games. The villains are a bit of a weak spot in the film. Antonio Banderas plays a wealthy businessman seeking the treasure because he has a sense of entitlement to it. He does a decent job at making this character dark and twisted, but he isn't in the film enough, nor is he given much to say or do to really flesh out his character. The result is a one-note character that could easily be the villain in any number of Hollywood action films. Tati Gabrielle is given more to do as the mercenary hired to assist Antonio Banderas. She engages in some cool action moments. She also has a unique look and an interesting teased relationship with some of the heroic characters of the film. But she is also limited to saying and doing villainous stuff just because she's a villain. In many ways her character is a henchman with a voice and a unique look, but little else. It's disappointing because there are hints at more, but we never see or hear any of it. Uncharted boasts good visuals, a brisk pace and plenty of energy. The action scenes are mixed well with the puzzle and mystery elements, and the main characters get enough time to bounce dialogue off one another, making this a mostly entertaining film throughout. It sometimes lacks brains or sophistication in terms of the central story. There are a few interesting twists and surprises to keep us on our toes, but little that's truly shocking, and not all the comedy hits perfectly, if at all. However, Uncharted is a fun, enjoyable film, and one of the better video game adaptations, even though it barely adapts the video games it's based upon. Overall, it's far better than I expected, but nothing outstanding.